Welcome back to MidPoint, Senior Fellow at the Center for Advanced Defense Studies, expert, counterterrorism, military intelligence. Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer joins us. Lieutenant Colonel, let's start out again with what Chuck Hagel has said recently, or rather what has been revealed that he wrote in a note. Earlier this month, while he was on a trip to Latin America, he wrote a very private, very blunt memo to the president, or actually I should say to Susan Rice, the National Security Advisor, about the U.S. policy towards Syria. It has now come to light. It says basically we need to have a sharper view of what to do about the Assad regime. Here is the man in charge who's coming right to the president saying we better do something right now. Why in the world would you have any sort of a leader who gets these sort of messages from the people that are supposed to know and simply does nothing?
Well, because there's actual problems with, hold on a second, I'm having interference here. Sorry, I don't know what's going on.
That's okay. I think you're still with us, Tony.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Go right ahead. It was something on the, don't worry about it. It's something on that,
anyway,
on that Skype line.
There's some real issues relating to the gatekeepers who surround the president right now. The problem that we've seen in correspondence between senior leaders is that it's all very formal, and actually it denotes the out-of-touch nature of the current National Security Council. I was actually talking to a former President Reagan senior official just today, right before the telecast here, about Susan Rice. Susan Rice is probably the least qualified person to be judging or trying to work these critical issues at this point in our history. And yet she's the gatekeeper. So it is very telling that someone like Chuck Hagel, who has probably the best intelligence on the planet, informing him of and helping him shape decisions, which is something that is greatly ignored by the president's inner circle. So what we see here is a detachment by the president and his inner circle to the point of where you have senior, very highly educated, competent leaders, and Chuck Hagel at times has not been as aggressive as he should be, but in this case he's completely right. There needs to be a clarification of what our objectives are for Syria and how we're going to be going about trying to dismantle ISIS.
Now let's go ahead and look at what ISIS has in their hand. According to Jane's Defense, we've looked at some of the numbers here and some of the descriptions. They apparently have Chinese-made FN-6 missiles. We should call them what they are. They're called man-pads, which is basically man-portable air defense systems.
Right.
In your opinion, do they have the knowledge in order to use these weapons properly, or is it just so simple as it point and shoot and somebody's there training them?
Let me answer this in a very polite way. A basic individual with an 8th grade or less education can fire these things. These things are designed for the lowest common denominator, essentially a soldier in the on the battlefield. So the answer is yeah, pretty much anybody can be trained in about half an hour at how to use this. With that said, we have some very sophisticated countermeasures that we have available on our aircraft. Not all aircraft have those. So I am confident that any aircraft we put forth, anything from what we call fast movers, which are the jets, to helicopters like the AA-64 Apache, could sustain and survive any attempt to bring them down using these. With that said, there's other helicopters on the battlefield which are not so well equipped. Private helicopters, civilian helicopters, and some of the helicopters built and bought from the Russians. So there's a real question here about what will happen regarding the use of these surface-to-air missiles in the battle space. The answer is we've tried to prevent these missiles coming to the battle space, but Qatar, our sometimes ally, has been very good about bypassing our guidance and getting some of these surface-to-air missiles into what they believed at the time were rebels that we could deal with, and now those weapons are now in the hands of ISIS.
Tony, got a little bit over a minute here. Pakistan is blaming everybody else for harboring known terrorists within their borders. They're looking at the tribes. They're looking at everybody. However, I'm now looking also at a report that says there is a consideration that ISIS is now in Pakistan. What do you expect them to do, if anything? How does this then change the game with ISIS moving into Pakistan?
The ungoverned tribal areas, the federally administered areas between the larger Pakistan and Afghanistan has always been a safe haven for terrorists. This goes back to before our invasion of Afghanistan and continues to this day. I was talking to a former senior officer about this recently, a former senior commander, 4-star commander, and Al-Qaeda and others have moved back into the very spaces the Pakistanis and we have abandoned. So the bottom line is, since we've left, Pakistan must step up if it wishes to do two things. First, maintain its own stability. The Taliban and other groups helped by ISIS and Al-Qaeda, will continue to destabilize their country unless they act. And secondly, Afghanistan. Afghanistan will fall back into the chaos it was before the 9/11 attacks should Pakistan do nothing. Truly, Pakistan should not be pointing the finger. They should be the ones actually acting the most vigorously to defend their own interests. And they don't seem to be interested in doing that at this point in time.
There's always the point, pointing the fingers. That's where we come down to, no matter what, when it comes to a lot of these governments. Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer, always a pleasure, my friend. Thanks so much. Have a great weekend.
You too, John. Thanks.
All right. Other side of the break, the need for mercenaries to win a fight against those who have no honor and no concern over whom they kill. And at 51 minutes after the hour, telling it like it is, has the answer for the perfect attitude America needs in its next president.